Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gay Men Going Deeper, a podcast by the Gay Men's Brotherhood where we talk about personal development, mental health, and sexuality. Today, I'm your host. My name is Michael Diorio. I am a life and wellness coach specializing in sexuality, relationships, and self-confidence. And today, we're going to be talking about friends with benefits. Specifically, we're going to cover what exactly a friend with benefits relationship is, why this is common amongst gay guys, what type of situation would a friend with benefits situation work, and when it doesn't. We'll also be talking about some do's and don'ts for having a satisfying friend with benefit situation. And as always, we'll be sharing our personal stories along the way. So to help me get into this wonderful topic today is Pepper of The Gay Good. He's going to share a lot of his experiences and expertise. So thank you, Pepper, for coming back to the show. Go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about you for those of you who didn't get to see our episode on being kinder on Grindr.
Yes, thank you so much for having me back. I had a great time doing that Kinder on Grinder episode with you. Received some good feedback on it as well. So happy to be here. My name is Pepper. I live in Los Angeles, California, where I am a content creator. My biggest project is an Instagram account called The Gay Good, where we tackle conversations that I believe in the queer community, specifically as gay men we should be having, whether that's how we can be better allies, how we can be better towards each other, and what information do we want to amplify to heterosexual and homosexual communities alike. Been working on that for about 3 years now. Started it in the pandemic, and it's been a really lovely part of my life, not only to grow as an individual, to learn from the posts that I make and from my engagements with my audience, and to also meet like-minded people like yourself. So thank you again for having me here. I'm excited to get into all of the greatness and the uncertainty and the beauty of the friends with benefits relationship.
Those are all wonderful descriptive words to describe it. And yes, listeners and viewers, I will be putting Pepper's Instagram account in the show notes, and I'll also actually link our Kinder on Grindr episode because that was a great episode. So I'll put them both in the show notes for anyone who's interested. Okay, let's jump into what this term, friends with benefits, FWB, even means. So before I was preparing for this podcast, I was like, I think I should probably define that because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my best explanation, and then Pepper will see what you have to say about it. So the way I define it is it's a friendly relationship with sexual perks, aka benefits, that happen on a relatively regular frequency. It is not dating, aka there's no intention for this to become something more. There's no intention or expectation for it to become a long-term relationship. So the vibe in a FWB for me is very casual, no commitment. So think of a platonic friend that you might have, right? Just a regular friend in your circle. And then you add the sexual fun, again, on a regular basis, not like that one-off you did when you were really drunk, but like, regular sexual fun, but then subtract any expectations for it to become anything more. But you still have that kindness and, warmness that comes with a friendship, but none of the weirdness or awkwardness that comes from hooking up with your friend. That's kind of how I would describe it. It's like a very narrow focus of what that could be. But ultimately, I think FWB, friends with benefits, gets a bad rap because, the words that I hear associated with it in a negative are it's people who are flaky, they're anti-commitment, they're intimacy avoidant, it's leading people on, it's shirking responsibility. And yeah, I would say, to be fair, in some cases that might be true. But it also can absolutely be a very satisfying, wonderful, healthy arrangement in the right circumstances. And we're going to be covering some of that today. So why might you want a friend with benefits? When might it be good? Some of the situations that came up for me would be coming out of a relationship. Like I might not want another long-term relationship right away, but I do want a consistent sex partner, but without the dating and getting to know you and the, where is this going conversation. So I kind of want something consistent and yet casual. Another time it could be beneficial is if you have like a lot going on in your life, like maybe you have a new career, you're just super career focused, or you're moving, or something's going on and you don't have time to prioritize dating and finding an LTR. But it's still nice, of course, to have someone who you can hook up with time and time again, and not necessarily have to like go find somebody new each time, but have a consistent person. So those are just two examples that I thought of that might be a good time to have a friend with benefits. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today, that those kinds of situations. So Pepper, what do you think of my definition?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's pretty perfect. Of course, there's room for interpretation and there's a
Mhm.
lot of fluidity and variety in these relationships, which we'll get into. But I think it's important to note that the first word is still friend, friend with benefits. So I think there is a warmness, there's an intimacy that's there. It just doesn't cross the line of romance, of expectation, of long-term planning. It can be, that saying, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I'd say these relationships typically don't last years and years, but for perhaps some people they can. It could be, as you were saying, having a partner, a consistent hookup partner, sexual partner slash friend while you're getting out of a relationship, while you're readjusting, while you're working on yourself, and also being honest with how much you can give to a relationship.
Yeah.
But the first word to me is friend. So, as someone who has had a number of these relationships, I still hold these men in a friendly regard. And what I mean by that is I do care about them. I do keep up with them on social media and in person, send supportive messages, want to hear about the projects they're working on, and have deeper conversations as well. But the expectation, as you articulated, is that this won't progress to something substantial or long term or really emotionally um, draining, for lack of a better word, but more emotionally like exhaustive.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I think that's a great definition, um, and one we'll keep on our minds throughout this
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah. And keeping in mind, like you said, those words are all open to interpretation. So I like that though. I like the fluidity and I think that works for me. Like I'm someone who doesn't I don't like having like labels and too many boundaries. I like working with the nuance and the gray and going from here to here. So it doesn't always work for people who are really black and white or don't like to kind of change those things. Let's talk about why friends with benefits is, I think quite common in the gay community. I see that on Grindr, going back to Grindr, a lot. Like, just looking for friend with benefits or just looking for consistent fun, but not a relationship. Why is that? Do you think?
Mhm. I think as queer people, we are more sexually liberated, and perhaps sexually outcasted from or outcast from the rest of society. So that gives us a freedom to make our own rules in our relationships, whether that be a throuple, an open relationship, a friends with benefits scenario. We have more, I guess, to choose from. We have more variety, and back to that fluidity we were discussing. It just allows us to kind of choose our own adventures, and to really sit back and think what would be best for me, what would be the most satisfying for me and this individual slash individuals that I'm engaging with. I also think in general there is more of a hookup culture, as we discussed on our Kindr on Grindr podcast. We're hooking up more, so there are more opportunities for relationships and more opportunities for variety in that relationship. And it goes back to assessing yourself first, and thinking, what can I handle right now? What do I have the space for physically, emotionally? And that gives us room for this sort of niche environment of a friends with benefits
Yeah.
structure that I think, when handled well, can be really exciting. Um, Lastly, I think the reason this is so common again within the gay community is, for better or for worse, I think gay men do a better job of separating sexual desires and emotions, whether that is a product of trauma in the past and we're compartmentalizing, or whether that is a strength of yours where you can choose and really lean into the emotions or the non-emotions of a moment or an act. That will again give us more space to create our own relationships on our own terms.
Very well said. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And with gay guys, because we are friends with people like obviously other gay guys, and those same people could also be our romantic partners, I think it offers up a lot of opportunity for the blur, a
Mhm.
friend turning into more than a friend or a hookup turning into that. And I think it really offers us just more opportunities than perhaps hetero or non-queer people.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about why, in what situations it would be, right for somebody to pursue a friend with benefits and maybe who it's not good for. So I can start us off with sort of my list. And then again, I am curious to hear what you'd have to add to this. So I was sitting with it and thinking about it. And I would say a friend with benefits is good for someone who's, like I said, not looking for the commitment of a long-term relationship right now, someone who's okay with openness and can handle the challenges that come with openness, someone who likes that fluidity and likes to kind of has fun making their own rules, kind of creating their own little relationship container. Um, Someone who doesn't need to know the answer to the question, where is this going? And also someone who I think is very secure in who they are, what they want, and they know how to express that out loud with words. It's one thing to know who you are and what you want, but then expressing it is a different thing. So that's, if that sounds like you, a friend with benefits situation might be good for you. Now, who is it not good for? People who want commitment. If you know you want a long-term commitment, don't get into a friend with benefits situation necessarily. Someone who maybe has a hard time with openness and likes, again, to have those rigid rules around the relationship, around what is friendship and what is not. Someone who has a hard time communicating their needs, their expectations, and their boundaries. And then someone who might be prone to jealousy. This might not work so well for you, or someone who gets very easily attached. So those are some of mine. What would you have to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of that. When it comes to me, I fit in the category of freshly out of a relationship. I mean, it's been 4.5 or 5 months now, but this year for the end of 2023, as we're rounding that corner towards the halfway point, I really want to focus on myself and my goals and building my platforms and really creating a stronger footing for myself here in Los Angeles. So I don't think right now I can entertain slash give my all to a serious long-term relationship. I'm not completely avoiding it, but it's not my priority right now. But I do gravitate towards a little bit more intimacy in my sexual relationships. I'm been pretty turned off from the one night stands, the hookup culture. I've recently logged out of my Grindr account and I'm just focusing on the partner slash pals that I do have. And I'm excited to see and continue to get to know. So that's where I would fall in. When it comes to open friends with benefits relationships too, something I want to touch on is earlier you talked about sort of the stigmas against it. And some of the words thrown out were potentially flaky, avoidant to commitment, non-communicative. But in preparing for our conversation, I was reading up online, just seeing what other people were talking about in these types of relationships. And research does show that there is more communication around boundaries, around consent, around jealousy in friends with benefit scenarios than most traditional, I guess, one-on-one long-term relationships. So I think the main thing to remember when it comes to a relationship like this is that it may be sensitive. So while you're asking yourself what you want, what you can handle, what you can give and afford in this relationship, keep that energy when you enter it and give that energy to your friend with benefits, to your whoever you're engaging in this relationship with, and communicate your expectations, how often you want to see each other, whether this will be exclusive or are you allowed to be on the apps or talk to someone slash flirt slash make out at a bar. What does this relationship look for you? And if you can't answer those questions yet, I don't think you should enter a relationship like this one, because there shouldn't be too much uncertainty once you've defined what it is exactly is that you're going to be getting into.
Yeah, well said. Um, I was just thinking as you're speaking, we'll get into some examples. I'd love it if you could share some of your own personal examples as well. But, you know, for some people, for me, I'll speak for myself. I haven't like intentionally gone and looked for a friend with benefits. How it happened for me historically is that I've hooked up with somebody and it just kind of like we hooked up once, we hooked up twice, started hanging out with each other, and then we kind of fell into it a little bit. Does that make sense? So you talk a little bit about the different ways you can kind of find yourself in a friend with benefits situation?
Yeah. So I think there's two ways. It's whether what come first, the chicken or the egg. Is it the friends before the benefits, or were the benefits there before the friendship? And I'd say the majority of mine have been like what you were explaining. Like you hook up with a guy a few times, you realize you like your energy, you have a good time, maybe he makes you laugh, but you're still not ready. You don't see that relationship becoming something incredibly serious, but you continue to see them and grow that relationship. Perhaps start hanging out a little bit more. But yeah, most of mine I've definitely fallen into off the apps. And not to counter, but I think I have entered like a dating app or an app like Grindr with the goal of finding a friends with benefits. I think it's a tag now on Grindr.
Yeah, it is.
But pretty sure I had that on there for a couple months this year, letting guys know, yeah, not really dating, looking for anything serious, but yeah, I'd like to get to know you more than just this one night. And I think that allowed me to find guys that were open to having conversations and sharing interests and hobbies and asking more than hung into,
Yeah.
which I look for when, opening myself up in more ways than one. Um, but in those relationships that the friendship comes first, I think it's a little trickier to navigate.
Mhm.
I think sometimes as gay men, there is that elephant in that room, the attraction we may have for one another. I have plenty of friends that I think are sexy, I think are beautiful. I don't want to hook up with all of them, or I don't see anything with all of them, but I can acknowledge the beauty of these friendships that I have and these, handsome men that I am lucky to know and to call my friends, for, of course, reasons other than just their physical appearance. But I would love to share a super recent experience I had. There's been this guy, we'll call him Jasper, for all my Twilight fans in the club. We'll call him Jasper. For the past, I'd say, month and a half, our relationship has been pretty uncertain to me. There's been flirty energy, there's been friendly energy, compliments of perhaps a little sexual innuendo here and there. And I like things to be very clear with the people in my life. And this relationship was pretty unclear to me. So about a week and a half ago, Jasper came over and I sat him down and was like, I want to talk about a relationship, and basically explained what I just said. It's a little unclear to me. I'm not sure where it's heading. I know we're both not looking for anything too serious, but I know there is also a mutual attraction there. So if you're open to it, I wouldn't mind exploring our physical chemistry more. And I didn't frame it as an I'm madly in love with you situation. Um, it was more of there's a curiosity here, and I'm leaning towards exploring it if you're open to that. And if not, just let me know so I can have some peace of mind and stop overthinking every conversation we have. And one, he was really impressed with my communication, and so was I. Little pat on the back for me
Yeah.
there. And we had a really sweet conversation that night and opened up about a lot of things in our lives and our paths, our relationship history, which I'm really thankful for. He ultimately decided just a couple of days ago he wants to keep it platonic, but I'm happy that he did validate those thoughts and sentiments that I have, that there was some sort of gray area, that there was some communication lacking there, that I wasn't going crazy. And two, although it is sort of a form of rejection, I'm mostly relieved to have the clarity in this relationship now of we're strictly friends, it's platonic, and I shouldn't take any flirty comments too seriously. But if the situ of his I guess decision was different, I think that's a pretty strong way to initiate a friends with benefits situation with someone you're already friends with, is just really sort of having the balls to address once again the elephant in the room, the attraction, the looks. What are we going to do about this? Are we going to lean into it or not? So that's my recent example of a potential friends with benefit situation, which is just a friend situation. That's what I got for you today. That's what's been cooking these past 2 weeks.
Coach Michael is very impressed with that communication. Like that is textbook, like exactly, it's the vulnerability, the courage to have the hard conversation. You're expressing what you need with kindness. It's coming from a place of love. Like you did it. It sounds like it was fantastic. That to me makes it more attractive. So if I was in Jasper's shoes, I'd be like, yes, I want to explore this more.
Yes. No, it was a really great conversation. And I was really like tickled when he told me he was impressed with my
Yeah.
communication and directness, which is something I've been working on. And then when it comes to situations like this, I have to credit you too, because I listened to the podcast on rejection. And I believe you were the one that said, like, ask out 100 guys, be rejected 100 times. And that will just give you the confidence, the security in yourself to keep putting yourself out there, which I am in a place now where I think I've never been as forthcoming or as confident in asking out a guy or wanting to put myself out there as I have been because I've been taking more risks and just being ultimately more honest with, again, my needs and what I have to give right now.
Yeah, that's ultimately what it's all about. I often tell people it's actually quite simple, but it's not easy. Like it's simple and know what you want and ask for it. And then that's it. But it's very hard for people to do that for a lot of different reasons.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
actually just got a call from a good friend of mine. He lives in Chicago. We met a few years ago, had a little fling, and now we're just friends. Don't know where the relationship would be if we were in the same city, but we're friends. It's pretty sisterly at this point, even though there's still attraction. And he was telling me he's in this sort of situationship too, and he wasn't exactly sure where it was going. And I was like, "Well, babe, it sounds like you're needing some answers." And he's like, "Yes, I need answers." And I was like, "Babe, if you need answers, you need to ask questions. And if there's no conversation, you're going to assume things, you're going to overthink. And when entering any relationships, especially a friends with benefits situations, if we get into the do's and don'ts, to me, some of the biggest don'ts are don't assume anything. Don't assume you're the only person they're talking to. Don't assume this could be going anywhere if you haven't discussed it. Don't assume they'll text you every day. You need to make these things clear about exactly what you were saying, what you want, what you're ready to give. And friends with benefit situation when it comes to making assumptions probably won't work out and can get particularly messy and complicated if we don't have pure tested guidelines and
Yeah,
open lines of communication.
yeah. It's a recipe for disaster.
Mhm.
Before going to the do's and don'ts, I want to ask you a question. So now that Jasper has indicated that he wants to be friends, uh, how easy is that going to be for you to kind of maintain that boundary? Because clearly you have some attraction towards him.
I think it'll be fairly easy.
Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, I know myself, and now that I have this answer, I know what to do with it. It was the uncertainty that was bothering me slash potentially like getting me frazzled or coming up with scenarios in my mind. But now that I know that that door of our relationship is closed, I can just focus on continuing to getting to know Jasper as a friend, as a sister, um, and someone that I'm lucky to have in my life. And I also want to put out there that the message he sent me when wanting or declaring that he wants to keep things platonic was very respectful. Harken back to like the compassion and the love that I put into our original conversation a week and a half ago, and receiving that without any of the cliches like "you're too good for me" or I know it's not me, it's you, or no, not that one.
Yeah,
It's
the other
not you,
one.
it's me. There was like no cliches like that. I think you're attractive, but like there was none of that, which that probably would have made me feel a type of way. But it was just really open and honest and loving. And again, the first word of our relationship and of friends with benefits is friend. And I definitely think we handled it as mature friends. And if anything, I think we are closer now as friends because
Mm.
we tackled this elephant in the room. And yeah, I will probably see him this weekend. We have a small group of friends I see all the time, and I'm excited to see him as a friend. But
That's
thanks for
awesome.
asking.
Yeah.
It's valid.
Let's talk about some other experiences if you feel comfortable where you have been in a friend with benefits situation. Maybe we can like tie this into some of the do's and don'ts. But you know, what has worked? Like when has it worked for you? And when hasn't it worked?
Yeah. So another example I can give is friends of benefits that I had last year. Um, and it was always just friends of benefits. See, I'm pretty sure we met off Grindr, hooked up a few times, and then fell into it that way. We would start hanging out a little bit more, play video games, between, sexual acts here and there. But it was good and friendly. And one day he did ask me, would you be interested in maybe moving this forward, maybe going on a date? And again, open and honest, which I always look for in friends and in people that I share my life with. I was not open to that at the time. Um, this harkens back to some questions that my mom has asked me before. I'm very open with my mom and with my relationships with men. In this particular scenario, I told her about this, and she goes, "Well, why not? Why don't you want to progress things? Why can't you see him as your partner or boyfriend one day if there is sexual chemistry and you do like spending time with them?" And for me, it was I just couldn't see a long-term relationship, and I don't want to date someone just to date someone or have the boyfriend label just to have it. I take that type of commitment very seriously. And if I can't see you there down the road, I don't think we should get on the road. So that was a conversation we had. We ultimately decided to take a break from our friends with benefits, to the benefits part of our friendship, and remain friends for a bit. In between that, I did get into a relationship for half of that year. But we've been seeing each other again now. It took, I'd say, 3 months post me and my breakup with my ex to sort of reintroduce benefits into the scenario. But it's all, again, about communication, being honest, remembering that you're speaking to a friend here. This isn't someone that you want to block or ghost, or you want to talk to them the way you would like to be treated. The golden rule, as cheesy as it can be, it really is a lifesaver, and a great like life raft in these situations. So that's definitely a situation where things have gone well. Um, Situations where things don't go well, I'd say an example is I hooked up with this guy about a month ago, Grinder. Then the very next day, he's like, "Do you want to be friends with benefits and make this a regular thing?" And I didn't really know of a nice way to say, we aren't even friends
Hmm.
at this point. But there was a lot of assumption, and a lot of jumping steps, or not going through the right progression. It didn't seem organic, and I was pretty turned off by that. The communication wasn't there for me, and perhaps I could have gotten to know this individual a little bit better, but it didn't make sense. I didn't feel like the way he came about it was talking to me like a friend. And again, I didn't have those feelings of friendship and compassion there to begin with. And yeah, it was a little bit of a turn off there. Do you have any examples in your life where things could have been done differently, or have you seen perhaps in your coaching friends with benefit situation where something was done that could have been handled more maturely or effectively?
Yeah, in my own situation, first of all, everything that you mentioned is great examples of how communication, is a do. Obviously, being honest with yourself and others is a do. Assuming is a don't. For me, it's about the self-awareness. So, like being honest with myself about why I might want this, right? So, we talk a lot about intimacy avoidance, and one of the things with friends with benefits is, oh, it's for people who are flaky and they don't want actual intimacy. So I think the self-awareness piece is coming in and being very honest with yourself about, is this intimacy avoidance, or do I truly, am I just really not wanting a committed relationship right now? Like, I'm not looking for that. And that can be a very hard question to answer for yourself, which is why it's really nice to have someone in your life who's going to give it to you real, who's going to ask you the right questions, whether it's a friend, a family member, a coach, a therapist, whoever that might be. So for me, I went through a phase where I was a serial monogamist for a while, for like probably 10 years. I had like three long-term boyfriends that were like 3, 4 years each. And after that, I was like, okay, Michael, time to be single. So we're just going to be single. And I was very intentional about that. And so, of course, that's when I met like the most amazing guys, right? I went on dates, I was on Tinder, but I told them all, I'm like, listen, I'm not looking for a relationship. I just am dating. Like, I just want to date and have that experience because I never had that experience. So in that case, it really worked for me. Unfortunately, it they didn't always turn into a friend with benefits. So we dated. They wanted more.
Mhm.
I didn't. And so that's where it was like, oh, you're leading me on. And I was like, well, no, I put right in my profile that like I wasn't actually looking for a relationship. And it was actually shitty for me too, because I'm like, I questioned myself, I'm like, Michael, this is a great guy. Like, what am I doing here? But ultimately, I decided to, go with my gut and say, no, I wanted to be single. I'm going to be single. So I think being honest with yourself about whether you are avoiding intimacy, like out of fear, like, is this a decision being made out of fear, or is this a decision being made out of like self integrity and honesty? Um, Again, not every time is going to be the same. Like, it's very nuanced. I know you can appreciate that. Like, it's not that black and white. There's a lot of room for fluidity, gray. Yes, in this case, no, in that case, right?
Yeah. Each relationship is different. Each person you're with is different. You yourself are different. I don't think I'm the same person I was last year, 3 years ago, or when first starting to date men, and come into my own as like a sexual being and as a mature adult. Even saying that sounds weird, mature adult. Okay.
Who?
Um,
Where?
yeah, let me know when that arrives. But yeah, there is a lot of nuance. I do think in general there are a few rules that you or ideals that you should maintain in yourself. So when it comes to youth, saying, I want to be single, I want to experience, I want to have this time for myself, kudos to you for knowing that and owning that, even if it does come with some hard conversations and you can be thinking, am I passing up a great guy? A lot of this does come down to timing. I think some potential don'ts in relationships, um, or something to caution away from, that I hold myself to is I try to limit or completely eliminate the idea of a sleepover. I
Mm,
try not to send like good morning texts. I basically try not to do boyfriendy type things, because that gives a different impression. Also, when preparing for this conversation and on the web, there were a few articles that were like 5 ways to make your friends with benefits into your next lover or like your next partner. And I was like, no, that don't do that. No, take that down. That's not the point. And of course, relationships are different, and perhaps feelings will form. We're only human. We're not perfect beings. But I think that also harkens back to understanding what you're getting yourself into at the very beginning. And if you need time to reassess, if things start changing, having a new conversation saying, how is this going for you? Be honest about your feelings. Am I getting a little jealous? Has this gone on long enough? Are the lines blurring? Do we want to take it back to friends? Are you also catching feelings? These are all conversations that would need to be had if anything changes. But I think to avoid any missteps or being on a different page, it's also avoiding those scenarios that make it seem a little bit too serious and a little bit too boyfriendy, partner, like the sleeping over, the text, the meeting the families.
mhm.
These are things that, ask yourself, do you want to be introducing this person to your family? If the answer is yes, then it sounds like a conversation needs to be had. But I also think it's also about checking in with yourself throughout the relationship. Is this going well? Am I being satisfied emotionally, physically? How is the friendship? It's like a plant. Friends with benefits is like a plant, and you have to continue to water it. And sometimes that plant may evolve.
Um, and everyone's expectations are different. That's the hard part I find. Like you might think, oh, I introduce everyone that I meet to my mom or dad or whatever. But for me, I might be like, oh no, no, no. Family's only for like people that I've been in a relationship with for a while, right? And so everyone has a different kind of level there. So it's really important to communicate like all those expectations. Um, especially expectations about like time spent together, like if we're going to be friends with benefits, like are we expecting to see each other like once a week or every other day? Like what are you thinking is going to come out of this? Because it's very easy for us to just make assumptions like, oh, I'm going to apply the term friends with benefits to you, Pepper, and I'm just going to not tell you this, but I'm going to assume that you're going to come over, every Friday and watch Drag Race with me.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be like, no, I do that with this group of friends over here. And like all of a sudden, oops, now we've got an issue, right? So it's about not assuming that and just being very open about all those little things, even things like sex,
Mm-hmm.
right? The friends with benefits situations I've been in have always been like non-exclusive sexually. It's like I assume they're out dating other people. They might even have a boyfriend
Yeah.
and they're open, right? And which is totally fine with me. So, but again, talking about okay, what's the expectation with safer sex? Is
Mm-hmm.
that something you're doing? Are you having sex with other people? Are you sharing that with your friend with benefits? Like, oh hey, I fucked this guy over here, and like, is that something that's part of your relationship or is it not? It's kind of like being in an open relationship in a way.
In a way, yeah, there's definitely, when it comes to the sexual aspect of it, I do think communication, as could be the theme of this episode,
Yeah,
honestly.
right.
Communication is key. But yeah, those are valid, important questions on safety, on frequency. Every time we see each other, is it sexual? Or are we also going to, go to a movie and just enjoy each other's companies without there having to be like an after party at my place once we roll the credits? Um, when it comes to I guess, envy in open relationships in that discussion, I think it's again just equally as important to verbalize what you're comfortable with. Maybe I'm okay with it. We are now friends with benefits, Michael. Maybe I'm okay with you, going out tonight and meeting someone and taking them home, but maybe I don't want to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that conversation too. How transparent are we going to be about our sexual endeavors and then perhaps our dating life as well? When I got into my relationship last year, I was dating some other guys, some friends with benefits situations, and I had to let them know I found someone that I'm curious about, and I want to solely focus on this relationship exclusively. Um, this is the what's going on in my life. So when it comes to our relationship, I think the benefits that are in place we should take a step back from that, so that I can be fair to this person who expressed to me they didn't want anything open and that they would like something exclusive. So I did have to make changes to the other relationships in my life to make space for and respect this guy I was excited to get to know, who ultimately became my boyfriend. Um, and once that ended, I was in a place where I knew I didn't want to, where I still know I don't necessarily want a long-term relationship. But I know for myself, I rather be sexual with people that I care about, I know, can joke with. And that's why I found myself sort of back in this friends with benefits era, for lack of a better word. Shout out to Mistress Isabel Brooks. But we're in our FWB era, apparently. Um, and I think I'm pretty secure in how I've handled all of this in the past year and managed these relationships. And it all stems again from not just being honest with my partners, my friends, these men, but also being chiefly honest, being very real with myself and what I can handle today, what I think I can handle in 2 months, um, and deciding to be as equally honest with the guys I'm talking to about what's going on internally.
I just had an aha moment that you inspired as you were speaking. And I'm hesitant to share it because this is like splitting hairs a little bit, but I think one of the ways that I've gone wrong previously in friend with benefits is mixing it up with what I call fuck buddies.
I was thinking of that too at the
Okay.
beginning of the episode when you were doing the when you were giving your definition. I was thinking about mentioning, the reason I pointed out that friends with benefits, the first word is friend, because in fuck buddies, the first word is fuck,
Yeah.
which I associate more with just a booty call, a lesser tier than friends with benefits. I don't know much about you. Just know that the dick game is strong and you live 2 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how I would define it as well. It's the emphasis is on the fun or the sex. It's the person I would message at 2 o'clock in the morning, being like, "Hey, you're around, let's
Mhm.
do this." And not necessarily any other time, only on 2 o'clock in the morning. Not, "Hey, how was your day?" Not, "Hey, want to go to the movies?"
15 p.m. You
Yeah.
up?
So that's where I went wrong, I think. I think what I was doing was thinking it was a friend with benefits, but in fact, what I was really kind of wanting was just someone like something transactional. I think that's another way to define it is a fuck buddy to me is transactional. It's about the fun, whereas a friend with benefits is personal. It's about the person.
Yeah, and I'm really happy you did bring that up because I'm sure plenty of people listening and plenty of gay men also may struggle with that line. And maybe two people are entering a friends with benefits relationship, and one thinks of it more as a fuck buddy, and the other one is more thinking of the friend and the conversations that may be had. Another one is thinking more transactional, and they both exist, for their reasons. They're both valid. You welcome all of it here, of course. Um, but as you mentioned, you may take a misstep without truly thinking, well, what is this relationship and how do I want to live within it?
I think the beauty of it as well is the fluidity. Like it's not 100% transactional or 100% personal necessarily. It could be sometimes it's transactional, but it could turn into something personal, or it kind of can flow from personal to now we're just it's about the sex, right? That's happened
Mhm.
too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, that also just makes me think of like I know a few guys that will have sex with their exes, and now it's mostly just transactional because the sex is really good. And I don't think I can do that, but that's me checking myself and knowing that I can't do that.
Yeah.
But that just harkens back to the beginning of our conversation with being sexually liberated, having more options, and having the tools and the time and the freedom to make our own rules when it comes to all of these relationships that we share with each other.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear, unless it wasn't already clear to our viewers and listeners, that we are not advocating for or against anything. We are advocating for like knowing yourself, being honest with yourself, and being honest about your interactions with others.
Yes, we are advocating for communication.
Yes, that's
At
what
the
this is really about.
honesty with yourself, with your partners, and knowing what you're getting into, and having the words and the clarity to express your needs and wants to yourself and to those you care about slash may want to touch.
And the thing is, this is the same advice that I would give people who are in a long-term relationship, like a committed relationship, right? It's not any different. It's actually quite the same. Having honest conversations about your needs, your expectations, checking in with each other on, hey, how is this feeling for you? Are you happy with how this is going? These are all the same tips I'd give monogamous coupled long-term committed relationships.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay. So were there any other do's and don'ts you have, Pepper?
Let me take a look at my little notebook. By my notebook, I mean my. I think we've covered most of them. The only other don't that I had was I would say it's more of a caution is caution against people that you see all the time. Coworkers, perhaps.
Hmm.
If you're on the same soccer team, perhaps, like think about how this could potentially get a little messy. Not to share too much because I'm a very different person by then. I'm from then, but I learned at a very young age in high school and college not to entertain, business with pleasure. Not that there was much business going on in high school, but, close organizations, relationships, people you see all the time. was a problem for me, and I know that for myself. So that's just something I would caution against, or just to be aware of if you are interested in someone that you're going to be spending 8 hours a day with 4 times a week. Be cautious of what that could mean for your work life, um, and for your relationship with them as well. You don't necessarily want things to spill over to areas of life where they shouldn't spill over into.
Very good tip. And that kind of reminds me of a question that I get quite often, actually, often enough that I want to mention it here. And actually, I want to see how you would answer this and if this was your situation. So let's say you have a friend who's in your friend group, not your best friend, but just someone in your group. And you just think he's very handsome and attractive. And then as you get to know him, his personality is also very attractive. So you're like, oh, okay, there's this person that I have in my friend group. I want to add the benefits, but I don't want to make it weird.
Mhm.
And I definitely don't want to be rejected. I don't want to ruin the friendship, right? That's something I hear a lot. Have you been in that situation, first of all?
I mean, I think this situation with Jasper is pretty
Mm.
close to it. So I would say yes. I necessarily wasn't fearing the rejection because it was more of a curiosity than a I need to be with you. I'm confessing my love. But I can definitely see how that could be scary for people and people who have had crushes on their friends for a long time, which I don't think I've experienced in this lifetime. Um, but yeah, I think this is the closest example slash experience I'd have to this prompt.
Yeah, it's happened with me. And what I did is instead of communicating it, I kind of communicated with flirting. So I'd kind of flirt here and there, an errant picture here and there with more than really I would send to a friend.
Mhm.
And, one thing led to another. And what ended up happening in that case was we did end up hooking up ahead of time. It was kind of like we both agreed, like, hey, I'm just really super curious about getting naked with you and seeing what that's like, but I don't necessarily want anything more. So we did it the once. We had a great time. And it was like, okay, we got that out of our system. But because we had that conversation ahead of time, knowing that, like, okay, we just kind of we're just curious here. It worked out really well. And we ended up staying friends and still flirting and everything. But because that was out of our system, it was kind of okay. So I don't even know if I would consider that a friend with benefits because it was just the one time. It wasn't a regular situation.
Yeah, and I think that's healthy to get it out of your system. There's definitely guys that I've been curious about, and maybe there's been a 1 or 2 night thing, but those don't didn't lead to like you said, a friends with benefits situation, which I think is more intimate, um, potentially more important, but it doesn't mean that the times you shared, the fun that you had wasn't
Yeah.
important. Again, you communicated, you knew the expectation going into it, and probably the reason you still have a relationship or can walk away from that with a smile on your face is because you already knew, the boundaries and the roadmap once you got there.
Yeah, and we were both on the same page. That's the key. He was okay with it. And had he not been, I would have been like, okay, well, that sucks. I'll just jerk off and fantasize about it later. But luckily, he was on the same page. He's like, I actually want to have sex with you too. It's like, great, let's do that.
Wonderful communication.
Yeah, doesn't always work. And I think that's where the fear for a lot of people comes in is, it really sucks to hear no. It really sucks to hear I'm not interested or like that hurts. And so that gets in the way of a lot of different kinds of relationships, not just a friend with benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, rejection is tough. It's hard. But on the other side, time heals all wounds.
Mhm.
I think if you approach it respectfully and they reject you respectfully, you will you will be able to move past that to regrow the friendship, even if it needs to be regrown. But yeah, if you have good intentions heading into the conversation, even if you're fearing the rejection of this longtime crush you've had on a friend, they'll probably let you down gracefully. Um, and at least you'll have what I have now with my situation with Jasper, like clarity and respect.
Yeah.
And, yes, there's rejection there, but I'm choosing to focus on the clarity and respect, and hope that anyone listening who's fearful of a conversation like that can also, hold and lean into that energy. of the fact that someone is seeing you, is taking what you're saying and not just, dismissing it, but they're actually thinking, do I want to engage with this person in a different light, in a more sexual manner? Um, and that care and time that someone comes to come up with a response, even if it's not what you want to hear, to me, that counts for something.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and having a hard time, like not knowing like what to say or how to say it, like reach out to one of us and we can
Yes.
help you craft that. Like Pepper gave a beautiful example of how to do that. I do that in my coaching. So yeah, hope it's okay that I just offered you up, Pepper.
Yeah, no, I'm actually thinking about like offering a new advice part of my channel as I'm in this new rebrand where I want to be a little bit more visible and a little bit more in front of the camera. So I'm thinking about doing a whole like advice series where I'll help you draft that message. I do that for my friends in my own life. A couple months ago, I was at a restaurant with my roommate and we drafted a "I'm not that into you" message, but
Mhm.
respectfully, and with compassion for that guy he was talking to. And I enjoy doing that because I think we both understand how tricky these conversations can be. But now that we've had I'd say, success with it, and just being able to walk away feeling good about it, it also feels good to help people draft those messages, formulate their words, and help them get across what they might be afraid to say.
Yeah, I love doing that. Like it actually thrills me when someone says to me, I don't know how to say it. I'm like, okay, tell me everything. Like let's craft it. It's so fun for me.
Mhm. Me too. Even as I'm a restaurant server by day, sometimes like when I'm really hitting it off with the table, I'm like, who needs advice? Forget them. Let's talk.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add today, Pepper?
That I hope everyone has a great day. Really just that. And thank you for having me on here again. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, to have conversations like this, which can be seen as taboo or tricky. I hope that people listening to this have found at least a few segments of our conversation they can relate to and see themselves in. Um, and yeah, thank you for having me. Is there anything else you want to discuss on this topic before we let each other go?
There's so many great things, but you know what I learned today? You and I would make a great friend with benefits.
Oh, I think so. The
Yeah,
communication, it would be sublime. I would never have to worry.
right. Me too. I feel very safe with you, Pepper.
Oh, thank you. I am enshrouded in safety and security.
All right. So thank you to Pepper for joining us on this topic. This surely will not be the last time we have you here on the Game and Going Deeper podcast. Also want to thank our viewers and listeners for sticking through the episode with us. If you have any questions or comments about this topic, please go ahead and leave that on YouTube if you're watching us, or you can come to our Instagram page and leave some comments there. I'm going to put all the amazing links in the show notes. And of course, please go ahead and give us a 5-star review. Every single review and comment counts. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.